Alright, so today's lesson, we are combining two lessons again, 2-4 and 2-5. So at the top of your composition book on your page, you can write 2-4, 2-5 for your notes. That it's going to be multiplying and dividing integers. I'm sorry, there's a fly that will not leave me alone. Okay, so multiplying and dividing integers. So we're going to start out with the rules for multiplying. So just like on our rules from 2 days ago when we did adding and subtracting integers, you're going to write this down and then put a box around it, star it, so that way you have it to reference. So when we are multiplying with integers, we have a positive. I'm going to use a dot to represent multiply. A positive times a positive, well, that's multiplication that we've done over and over for the past several years. We're going to get a positive answer. Okay? When we have a negative times a negative, they cancel out. We can't have a double negative. A negative times a negative still equals a positive. So with multiplication, when they are the same sign, you get a positive. The only time you get a negative answer when multiplying is when the signs are different. So when we have positive times a negative or vice versa, negative times a positive, it still will equal a negative. So if they're different, it's a negative. If they're the same sign, it's a positive.
Okay, so now we're going to look at example 1. Find each product. A, we have negative 3 times 12. 3 times 12 is 36, and then a negative times a positive is negative. So then on B, when it's right beside the parentheses, that still means multiply. 4 times negative 7. 4 times 7 is 28. Positive times negative is negative 28. Go ahead and write down 1A and 1B and try those. I'll go over them after we look at example 2. Let's see if it'll scroll. Here we go. Okay, example 2, it's just more practice. So negative 5 times negative 7, a negative times a negative cancels and becomes positive, and then 5 times 7 is 35. On B, we have negative 8 times negative 14. 8 times 14 is 112, and again a negative times a negative cancels and makes a positive. So I want you to also write down 2A and 2B, and now try all 4 of those problems. Pause the video, and then when you press play, I will work them out for you.
Alright, so looking back at those examples from the problems from example 1, we have 7 times negative 8. So we have a positive and a negative. Since they're different, it means we'll have a negative in our answer. And then 7 times 8 is 56. So we get negative 56 on that first one. Okay? On the second one, again, I have a negative times a positive. They're different, so I'm going to get a negative because they're not the same. 6 times 12, 72. So negative 72. Okay? Now you should have just done these 2 problems from example 2. So a negative times a negative cancels and makes a positive. 5 times 11 is 55. So we get positive 55. On problem B, we have negative 13 times negative 4. Again, a negative times a negative is positive. Then we have 13 times 4. And I can't remember that for some reason off the top of my head, so we're going to work it out. 3 times 4 is 12, 4, 5. So that is positive 52.
Okay, example 3. It says an airplane descends at a rate of 175 feet per minute. What is the airplane's change in altitude after 5 minutes? Write a multiplication expression and then find and interpret the product. So when it tells us that it descends, that's a key word right there, descends. That means something is going down. Okay, so we would represent that with a negative integer. So when it says it descends at a rate of 175 feet per minute, that means it's going down 175 feet every minute. So that means for 1 minute. So then it says, what is the airplane's change in altitude after 5 minutes? Well, we know after 1 minute, it went down 175 feet. So if we wanted to find out for after 5 minutes, well, we would take that and you could add it 5 times, or you could just multiply by 5. So that's what they've shown here. Then when you multiply that, you get negative 875. So then when it says, so we wrote our expression right here, and then it says find and interpret the product. All that means is go back and put it in terms of the problem. It says, so the airplane descends 875 feet after 5 minutes. They just want to know if you can go back and use the numbers or answer in relation to what they were talking about in the problem. So I'm going to give you just this one word problem. Number 3 at the bottom. I want you to try your best to set it up first, and then you can watch me work it out. If you can't figure it out, you can go ahead and watch it, but I really want you to try it on your own first.
Okay, this next problem, our word problem, says a scuba diver descends from the surface at a rate of 7 feet per minute. What was the scuba diver's depth after 15 minutes? And it tells us to write a multiplication expression, then find and interpret the product. So first let's go back and look at what numbers information we're given. So the scuba diver descends. I want to talk about that word because that's very important. Okay? Descends means going down. So it's a scuba diver, so they're diving down, okay, like a lot of people do up at Broken Bow Lake. So ascend, when it starts with an A, that goes up. Descend goes down. So we would represent that with a negative integer. So when it says he descends from the surface at a rate of 7 feet per minute. So we have 7 feet per minute. That is my integer, so he's descending at that rate. So he's going down 7. Okay, then it says, what was the scuba diver's depth after 15 minutes? Okay, well, we know he goes down 7 feet per minute. That means for 1 minute. So each minute he goes down 7 feet. So when we're trying to find out for 15 feet, we would take that and multiply it. Okay, we have a positive and a negative, so our answer is negative, and that is 105. Then it says, write this as an expression and interpret the product. Product means your answer. So to interpret that, we would say, after 15 minutes, he descended 105 feet after 15 minutes. That would be what it means by interpret it. They just want to know, can you go back and take that number and tell us what it meant in terms of the problem? So it told us that what we found was down 100 feet, so descends. I probably should write that word. He descends 105 feet after 15 minutes.
Okay, now looking at example 4, it says find negative 4 times 12 times negative 5. So now we have 3 things being multiplied. So this first example, they kind of show that you can kind of put like brackets around the first 2 because we know brackets mean big parentheses. But using your order of operations, since they're all being multiplied, you just start with the first 2 from left to right. So negative 4 times 12 is negative 48. Then we have times negative 5. So you just piece it together. So then once you multiply those, a negative times a negative, they cancel and becomes positive, and you get 240. Okay, so I want you to try 2 of these. Remember, just start at the beginning and do the first 2, then multiply that answer by the third number. Or if we had 4 numbers, you would do it the same way. So try 4A and 4B, pause the video, and then press play to watch me work them out.
All right, problems 4A and 4B. We have negative 7 times 9 times negative 6. So we have 3 things being multiplied. We start with the first 2. Negative 7 times 9. 7 times 9 is 63. Negative times a positive is negative. I still have this times negative 6. So now I would do this. A negative times a negative is positive. And 63 times 6, I'm going to plug that in the calculator, is 378. So that would be our answer for that one. On 4B, I have negative 3 times negative 4 times negative 5. So I start with the beginning. Negative 3 times negative 4, 3 times 4 is 12. Negative times negative is positive. I still have times negative 5 now. 12 times 5 is 60. A positive times a negative is negative. Okay, really got to make sure you get those positive and negatives correct now, because that's kind of the whole point of this. The multiplying and dividing that we're about to do is more of just review. It's seeing if you can get those positives and negatives down.
Okay, so example 5. This is probably the trickiest one because it says simplify, and we have a negative 7a times, and in parentheses 4b. So this technically means negative 7 times a times 4 times b. So they write that out right here to show you. They just put it all in parentheses to show you it's all just being multiplied. Okay. Now, they don't tell us what A or B is. So when it says simplify, that just means get it down as small as you can. You won't get just one final answer. So what they've done, once they put it in parentheses here, they rewrote it, putting their like terms together. What like terms mean, if I were to look, here's a letter, a number, and a number. So they just rearrange it since it's all being multiplied anyways. They put their numbers together and their letters together. So we have negative 7 times 4 times a times b. So negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. And then we still have times a times b. Whenever you have letters, you can just put them side by side, and that means they're being multiplied. Now, we don't know what a or b are, so that is as far as we can go. That is simplified, negative 28ab. Okay, so like on 5a and 5b, you're going to try those. Remember, you're not going to get one final answer because we don't know what y or x are. So they're still going to be in your answer. So I want you to pause the video and try 5a and 5b, and then I'll work them out for you.
All right, on example 5, these seem to be confusing for people, but all you're doing is simplifying. That means you might not get one answer. Okay, so I have negative 3 times 6 times y. It doesn't give me any information on what y is, so we don't know. There's no equal sign, so we're not solving for it. We're just going to get this down as small as we can go. Okay, so since this 3 is being multiplied out here, I can multiply it in. So negative 3 times 6, 6 times 3 is 18, a negative times a positive is negative 18, and I still have times y. We don't know what y is, so that is as far as we can go. That is our simplified answer. This fly will not leave me alone. I'm sorry. Okay, 5b. We have negative 9 times x times 3 times y. Again, these are not the same. Okay, x and y, they're different. And they're being multiplied by something. We have no clue what x and y are. Okay, when we don't know, you cannot add or subtract things if one has an x and one doesn't, but you can multiply or divide them. So we can use these front numbers. We could almost rearrange this. So I'm going to kind of split it apart. So we can kind of say, okay, well, negative 9 times 3 times x times y. Okay, this is not how you would work it out. I'm just showing you what I'm doing. Negative 9 times 3 is negative 27 times x times y. Because when we have letters, we can just put them right beside it, and that means it's being multiplied. That's as far as we can go. So we leave it like that.
Okay, example 6. This is the last example we will look at before we look at dividing integers. So this first problem says evaluate 3xy if x equals 2 and y equals negative 6. So evaluate is just a super fancy word for solve. Just means go ahead and find the answer. So 3xy, that means 3 times x times y. But now they tell me what x and y equal. So the first thing we always do on these types of problems is go ahead and rewrite it. Substitute in your numbers. So 3 times x, they tell me x is 2, times y, they tell me y is negative 6. So now you are just having to multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. Then we have 6 times negative 6, which gives us an answer of negative 36. Okay, so I want you to do 6a and 6b on your own. So we have evaluate 2rs if r is 5 and s is negative 10, and evaluate 4ab if a is negative 8 and b is negative 4.
Okay, problem 6a says evaluate 2rs if r equals 5 and s equals negative 10. Evaluate is just a fancy word for solve it or work it out. Okay, so evaluate 2RS. This means 2 times R times S. So the first thing we always do on these problems when we have to substitute in numbers is rewrite them. So I have 2 times, they tell me R is 5, times S, which is negative 10. Now I'm just solving these problems. You can use your calculator. 2 times 5 we know is 10. Positive times positive is positive. Now I have 10 times negative 10. Positive and a negative is negative. 10 times 10 is 100. So that is negative 100. Okay, 6b. Evaluate 4ab. That means 4 times a times b. A is negative 8, b is negative 4. So 4 times negative 8 times negative 4. 4 times 8 is 32. Positive and a negative is negative. I now have negative 32 times negative 4. Negative times a negative is positive. 32 times 4 is 128. Okay, now what I want you to do, make a little place. We're going to box in some rules again. We're going to look at the dividing rules. Dividing and multiplying, I always like to combine those lessons together because their rules work the exact same way. It's just one you're multiplying, one you're dividing. So we're going to write those rules down for dividing. You can write above it dividing integers if you would like, so you know what you were doing. Okay, so we'll start with the basic one. A positive divided by a positive, that's the dividing you've been doing for years now, is a positive answer. Okay, just like multiplying, when we have a negative divided by a negative, they cancel and make a positive. Okay, so just like multiplying and dividing, when they're the same sign, you have a positive answer. The only time you have a negative answer is when they are different. I'll put that between them. Okay, when one's positive and one's negative. So this negative divided by a negative, one example I'm going to show you, negative 2 over negative 4. Let's just do that. Or let me switch them. Negative 4 over negative 2. I like to show you written this way because it makes a little more sense on how these cancel. So 4 divided by 2, when they're above each other, just put a plus sign through them. They cancel. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Because if you were to work backwards, we know 2 times 2 is 4. So if I did 2, this one right here, times negative 2, that gives me that first answer of negative 4. Because a positive and a negative equals a negative. So it has to work both ways for multiplying and dividing. So that's why it cancels. Now let's look at example 1.
Okay, so now on example 1, it says find each quotient. That just means the answer to a division problem. So on A, it says negative 35 divided by 7. If you remember the rules you just wrote, go ahead and divide it. 35 divided by 7 is 5. Then we have a negative divided by a positive. They are different, so our sign is negative. So negative 35 divided by 7 is negative 5. On B, they just wrote it up and down. 64 over negative 8 just means 64 divided by negative 8. I like it when it's written like this because you can just circle and see. If they're the same, it's positive. If they're different, it's negative. So we have nothing and a negative, which means we have a negative answer. 64 divided by 8 is 8, so negative 8. We're going to go ahead and look at example 2 before I work out these two problems and the next ones. So you can go ahead and write these two down, but I'm not going to work them out till after we look at example 2. So give me a second. Let's see here. All right, here is example 2. So find each quotient because they're just similar to what we just looked at. So 48 divided by 12. Okay, well that looks easy, but it's still the same stuff. You're just used to seeing it with positives only. So positive divided by a positive is positive. So 48 divided by 12 is 4. Okay, and then on B, we have negative 56 divided by negative 8. So I like these because a negative over a negative, they're the same. It cancels and makes a positive. so positive 7. So I want you to do 2a and 2b. So pause the video, work out 1a, 1b, 2a, 2b, and then I'll work them all out for you.
Okay, so now we're going to go back and look at example 1A and 1B that you did just a little bit ago. So on 1A, we have negative 63 divided by 7. So a negative divided by a positive, or vice versa, is a negative. 63 divided by 7 is 9. So negative 9. Okay, on here, on B, we had 110 divided by negative 10. So a positive and a negative, when they're different, your answer is negative. Okay, anytime you have 0 at the end, they cancel, and I have 11 divided by 1, which is 11. So negative 11. Okay, now we're going to look at the two that you just did on your own. If you haven't, pause the video and work them out. So I have negative 35 divided by negative 5. A negative divided by a negative is positive. They cancel. 35 divided by 5 is 7. So positive 7. Okay, on 2b, I have a positive 39 divided by a positive 3. So we know our answer is positive. And then you would just do 39 divided by 3, which comes out to 13.
All right, so last example, example 3, says evaluate each expression if x equals negative 6 and y equals negative 3. So we just talked about that word evaluate is just a fancy word for solve. So on A, we have 12y divided by x. So that means 12 times y divided by x. So the first thing you always do on these is rewrite it. So 12 times y, well, they told me y is negative 3, so I have 12 times a negative 3 divided by x, which is negative 6. So now you use your PEMDAS, your order of operations. We have multiplying and dividing, so you do whichever one comes first in the problem, which would be 12 times negative 3. A positive times a negative is negative, so we get negative 36 divided by negative 6. Now I have a negative divided by a negative, which is positive. 36 divided by 6 is just 6. Okay, on B, we have negative 5x over y. So that means negative 5 times x divided by y. Now when they're written like this, it's over something. You need to do the whole top and the whole bottom and then combine them. So we have negative 5 times negative 6 on top, all divided by negative 3. So negative 5 times negative 6 is 30. 30 divided by negative 3 is negative 10. So I want you to do 3a and 3b. You're still going to use these up here. X is negative 6, y is negative 3 in order to solve these two problems, okay? So write those down. Use the x is negative 6 and y is negative 3, and then I'll work them out for you.
All right, example 3. We have 2y divided by x. First thing we do is rewrite it, substituting in our numbers. They tell us that x equals negative 6 and y equals negative 3. So I have 2 times y is negative 3, divided by x, which is negative 6. Okay, I'm going to put it in parentheses just so those aren't side by side. All right, so now I have multiplying and dividing. You do whichever one comes first in the problem. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite everything else. Now, I have a negative divided by a negative, so they cancel and make it positive. 6 divided by 6 is 1. All of that, and it just equals 1. Okay, on 3b, I have 3 times x divided by negative y. So 3 times x, which is negative 6. And pay attention to this part because it says divided by negative y. So I have a negative, but my y is also negative 3. What happens when you have a negative, two negatives beside each other? They cancel, a double negative. So that is actually 3 times negative 6 divided by 3. 3 times negative 6, negative 18, divided by positive 3. A negative divided by a positive is negative. 18 divided by 3 is 6. So it all comes out to negative 6.